What's up, guys? Welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. Hope you're all doing wonderful. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and as usual, we're getting right into today's Reddit posts. I want a biscuit. The 2-day saga of a hospital Karen. I was in hospital and ended up being put in the observation unit because no specialist beds were available. The observation unit is a catch-all ward, where patients are put if they're not in immediate danger but need regular monitoring. It's bright and extremely noisy, so nobody can sleep well. Unfortunately, Biscuit Karen arrives at 10 p.m. on day 1. Why is she called Biscuit Karen? Because she wants a biscuit, and she's shouting this loudly enough for the whole observation unit to hear. Never mind the time, or that we're mostly trying to sleep. Never mind that her blood sugar is 8.5, elevated, and she's diabetic, so she really doesn't need more sugar. But hey ho, the long-suffering nurses find her a biscuit and ask her to be quiet. Biscuit Karen does not quiet down, because shouting is her default setting, and she doesn't seem to notice that other patients exist. After 10 minutes of solid noise pollution, she wants another biscuit. The nurses give it to her. More noise. Then another 15 minutes later, she shout calls for another biscuit. The nurses are occupied, so nobody answers her immediately. So she shouts her request louder, as if we all hadn't heard her already. This is where the nurses begin to lose patience. She is told to be quiet, and her blood sugar level is mentioned. However, Biscuit Karen insists, so she's given another effing biscuit. Maybe the nurses drugged this one because Biscuit Karen soon goes to sleep, and snores, loudly. This was a taste of what was to come, but nobody on the observation unit knew it yet. Day 2, 11 p.m. Biscuit Karen has been okay all day, and nothing much appears to be wrong with her. She has a walking aid and can get herself to the toilet. But she doesn't want to. She shout calls a nurse to put her on the commode. A very blunt nurse points out that she's seen Karen walking, so she's not going to help her. The toilet is only 10 meters away. Biscuit Karen does not accept this. She keeps shouting for a nurse to help her. Eventually, the blunt nurse goes to check, and Biscuit Karen has actually wet herself in her passive-aggressive rage. The nurse is shocked and is telling Biscuit Karen off. Biscuit Karen does not care. Meanwhile, the bed is now sodden and the sheets have to be changed. The blunt nurse helps put Biscuit Karen on the commode, and then goes to get the spare sheets. Unfortunately for the nurses, the other patients are being equally tricky. There's the alcoholic man who can't walk but keeps trying and falling to the floor, the polar opposite of our anti-heroine, and a woman with a broken neck who constantly takes off her nightgown and tries to go wandering. All the nurses are kept busy rounding up the strays, and inevitably forget about the abandoned Biscuit Karen left sitting on the commode. Biscuit Karen ensures that she's not neglected for long. "Can somebody help me?" ricochets repeatedly around the observation unit, to the dismay of all the people trying to sleep. Eventually it becomes, "Somebody help me, my back hurts." Of all the disruptive behavior happening on the observation unit, she's by far the loudest, the most persistent, and the most obnoxious, because she caused her own discomfort in the first place. I'm peeved, and so is everyone else. Blunt nurse gets back to her and an argument starts. She's cross as she's needlessly making the bed. Biscuit Karen is angry that she's been left in an uncomfortable sitting position. In fact, she's getting more aggressive by the second, and eventually she slaps the nurse. Blunt nurse doesn't put up with this nonsense. She abandons making the bed, leaves Biscuit Karen on timeout, still on the commode, and ignores all shouted commands to come back. She tells the other irate patients that she's not risking further aggression, and we all agree with her in solidarity. Blunt nurse was true to her word, so eventually deeply compassionate nurse tried her luck making the bed. Unfortunately for the compassionate nurse, Biscuit Karen is a raging racist, true to stereotype, and she not only calls her the N-word but also tells her to go back to where she came from. Compassionate nurse nopes out at that point, while blunt nurse calls security. Biscuit Karen has begun yelling every few seconds, "I want my phone, where is my phone?" still from the commode, presumably so she can enact her threats. "I'm going to report you, I'm going to get you fired." The nurses aren't stupid though, so nobody gives Biscuit Karen her phone. It doesn't occur to Biscuit Karen to get off the commode and find her own phone. Meanwhile, the other patients have hit their bullcrap saturation point and have started yelling at Biscuit Karen to shut up. It's past 12 a.m. and nobody can go to sleep yet. At this point, the cries from Biscuit Karen changed to "somebody help me" every 3 seconds over and over again. The nurses are unmoved. There is a torrent of reactive verbal abuse from the other patients, but Biscuit Karen doesn't seem to hear them. In fact, she has completely devolved into a pathetic toddler tantrum, except toddlers have more self-respect, and she stays immersed in her self-pity for a long time. Meanwhile, 1 a.m. rolls around. Security officers take their time to arrive, but when they do, they are met with what appears to be a distressed old lady who claims that the nurses are hurting her and that the deeply compassionate nurse actually hit her, an audacious lie. However, Biscuit Karen is too dysregulated to keep the facade up for long, and morphs back into a spiteful and aggressive harpy when Blunt Nurse goes back to fix the bed. The security officers see exactly why they were called, and try to keep the peace while the bed is finally finished. There's not much 2 thick-set men can do with a small old woman perched on a commode, but they tried. Eventually, Biscuit Karen starts demanding her medication, and somebody comes up with the bright idea of calling an accident and emergency doctor. Who can quell the entitled savagery of the enraged Karen? Of course it would be a young, handsome, confident male doctor. The very epitome of a rescuer to an old bitch who's trying to play the victim. When he turns up, Biscuit Karen becomes a sweet and compliant old lady, answering "yes doctor, no doctor." She does try to repeat her lie about being assaulted, but several patient statements, 2 jaded nurses, and 2 exiting security personnel proved otherwise. The doctor gave Biscuit Karen her meds, she was helped to bed, and she fell asleep. Meanwhile, the rest of the patients on the observation unit were too high on adrenaline to feel drowsy, so we were condemned to further wakefulness. I was glad to leave the next day. You paid for a kid's milk, now buy my cigarettes. I used to work at a little convenience store in a very small town. Every customer was a regular. I had this one kid who was about 12 years old. He came every school day on his bike. He bought a chocolate milk and a thing of cheese crackers every day. The total at the time was $2.08 after tax, USD. The kid always paid in change, like it came out of his piggy bank. One day he came in with this look that said he had a really bad day. He shuffled through the store and grabbed as usual, but was short about 10 cents. He went to put his crackers up, and I pulled a dime out of my pocket, smiled at him, saying he's all good and enjoy his snack. The kid thanked me and left, looking quite a bit happier. The next customer was a regular as well, but he was a man in his 40s wanting his usual pack of cigarettes. I ring him up and tell him the total. He smiles and says, "Well, aren't you paying for it?" I tell him no. He proceeded to yell at me that if I'm buying customers' stuff that I should pay for his cigarettes. There is a line of customers behind him that saw what had happened with the kid. I tell him there is a difference between helping a kid who is slightly short for an after-school snack and a full-grown man trying to force a woman to buy his smokes. He starts yelling at me about favoritism, and I look him in the eyes and tell him, "Yeah, and?" He proceeds to yell insults at me before I simply grab his cigarettes and put them back on the shelf. The guy is like, "What are you doing? I'm buying those." I respond, "Not today and not from me. Please leave." He starts to reach across the counter when I step back. Now, it's important to note that I was about 7 months pregnant at the time, and stepping back revealed my pregnant belly. I'm short, so the counter typically hid this feature. I wasn't doing it to reveal anything. I was just getting out of reach. The customers behind him started to almost riot about him attacking a pregnant woman for helping a kid. The guy was no longer a regular, and every customer behind him started a quote after-school snack fund for the kid. Started with the first guy putting an extra $1 on the counter for the kid, and it just kept going until I set a jar. The kid had free chocolate milk for almost a month before I had to go on maternity leave. You want to keep driving through my property? I'll make it so you can't drive. A few years ago, my partner and I purchased a block of land that we were planning on leveling and building our forever home on. But due to rising building costs, we have unfortunately had to hold off building at this point, and have been utilizing the space as a dog run/chill point, as we have both ocean and mountain views. About 6 months ago, we started to notice tire tracks running through our property, from one side all the way to the other. Always the same path taken, so we now have 2 beautiful deep tire tracks on our property. Awesome. No worries, we popped up a fence to deter the people from driving through. Yup, they drove through the fence. We would put it back up, and the very next time we would go out there, the fence was driven through again. At this point, this has been going on for about 6 months, and during that time, we decided to stop mowing the lawn. You know, hopefully to make it a bit more challenging for them to drive through. Nope, continues to drive through. No worries, we'll just keep it growing. Love the look, plus bonus points for not having to worry about maintenance. The other great thing about long grass is you can hide all kinds of things there. And since it's our property that we're just leaving bare, we can obviously start storing some goods on there. Like metal star pickets. They also sit in the ground on just the right angle to puncture your radiator if you try to drive through it without knowing it's there. The last time I visited our property, there was some nicely bent star pickets strewn about, some that had been snapped clean and a few that had very clearly been thrown in anger. Turns out tow trucks make big grooves in grass. But I'm the veteran. I'm a disabled veteran of the US Army. My state offers a special tag for disabled veterans. You have to present your discharge papers or a letter from the VA verifying you have a disability before they will issue you the tag. While I have a disability, I don't qualify for a handicap parking permit. I should note that my disability is not readily visible. You may see me walking with a limp, but that's about it. I sometimes use a cane if I'm hurting bad enough. The other day I was out running errands and parked in a spot reserved for veterans. I like these spots because they're close to the entrance, and I was having a high pain day. This boomer man comes towards me, yelling at me that I shouldn't park there without my husband. I'm all sorts of confused by this. Yes, I'm married, but I frequently do things without him. He keeps on telling me I'm taking a space from an actual veteran. I ask him what he's talking about. He tells me I have to move my car, and to thank my husband for his service. I give him the confused dog head tilt. Then I asked him why I would thank my husband when we weren't even married when I served. The spluttering and enraged look he gave me was wonderful. I blew that man's mind, which is really weird because women have served for decades. It's nothing new. I happily walked in the store using my cane while the man stormed off to his car. Alright guys, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, and also hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when we upload. So have a nice day everyone, and I'll see you next time.